He called me expired at dinner. Then he moved his new bride into the house I bought. Used my plates. Posed on my staircase. Called it their dream home. They thought I'd sit quiet. Smile in the background. Fade out like wallpaper. But some women don't fade. Some of us wait. We watch. And when the time is right, we remind the world exactly who we are. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know, I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. He called me expired at dinner, like I wasn't even sitting there. It was just after the papers were signed, a final hollow attempt at civility Fred had insisted upon, as if a shared plate of overcooked salmon could somehow cauterize the gaping wound of 35 years. He'd already moved on, of course, to her. Jasmine. Younger, all bright teeth, relentless ambition, and an aggressively curated online persona. An influencer who presented her life in perfect filtered squares, each one a tiny, polished denial of reality. "You're a good woman, Evelyn," Fred had said, the words as empty as the space he was leaving in our marriage, as hollow as the promises he'd once whispered in the dark. "But I need more life in my life." Then he'd winked. Winked. As if I were a service contract he was gratefully discontinuing, a subscription whose renewal fee was no longer worth the benefit. The casual cruelty of it, the sheer, unadulterated selfishness, was breathtaking. 3 weeks later, Jasmine's Instagram page, a digital shrine to fleeting trends, brand partnerships, and the relentless pursuit of superficial validation, announced their bliss to her thousands of followers. A quote in her bio, stark against a backdrop of a sunset she'd probably paid a photographer to capture, read, "You either evolve or expire." I wasn't tagged, naturally. One doesn't tag the debris of one's former life. But the internet is a remarkably small town when your niece teaches middle school, possesses a forensic talent for social media sleuthing, and considers it her familial duty to keep you informed of such betrayals. She'd sent me the screenshot with a simple, "Auntie Ev, you need to see this." The nerve. The word, expired, echoed Fred's dinner table pronouncement with a chilling resonance. It wasn't a cry of grief that caught in my throat then, not anymore. The initial shock had numbed into a cold, hard knot of something else entirely. It was insult, deep and rancid, curdling under my ribs like spoiled milk. He'd chosen evolution, apparently, a brand of it that involved shedding the past like an old skin. And I, Evelyn Hayes, was the casualty, the inconvenient reminder of a life he now deemed insufficient. When Fred packed his remaining things from the house, the one we'd built from scratch, beam by beam, argument by argument, dream by dream, the one with the white porch swing I'd spent a whole summer saving for and the blue shutters I'd painstakingly painted myself, a shade called summer sky, he hadn't wanted it. "Too much dead weight, Ev," he'd said, his eyes already distant, fixed on some shimmering, jasmine-filled horizon. "Too many memories." He was eager to shed the past, to unburden himself of the weight of our shared history. So, in the divorce it became solely mine. The deed, thankfully, had never been muddled with co-ownership post-separation. It remained clearly, unequivocally in my name, Evelyn Hayes. A small mercy, a legal bulwark I hadn't realized then how much I would come to need. I kept the house, the repository of my life, the silent witness to whispered confidences, boisterous family dinners, and a devastating miscarriage in the spring of '96, after which I still planted daffodils that summer, a stubborn, tear-fueled act of hope against the encroaching despair. Each yellow trumpet was a tiny defiance. Fred took the new, the filtered, the flexible. Jasmine. She called brunch a vibe, and posed on countertops in wide-brimmed hats, her carefully constructed nonchalance a performance for an unseen audience. They made their official debut as a couple at some trendy rooftop wine bar, all matching white outfits that screamed, "We're a brand," and clinking champagne flutes held high for the inevitable social media snapshot. Then came the engagement announcement, splashed across Jasmine's feed. Destination wedding, Greece, naturally. My sister Janice, ever practical, her pronouncements as sharp and sensible as her bobbed haircut, had declared over a cup of strong tea, "You dodged a bullet, Ev." A gold-plated, influencer-shaped bullet. I'd nodded, a weak imitation of agreement, though the wound was still raw, still bleeding in places no one could see. It was a month after their ostentatious engagement, Just as the initial sting was beginning to dull into a persistent ache, that Fred's voice, oozing that familiar, cloying tone he always adopted when he was about to ask for something he knew he didn't deserve, came through my phone. "Hey Ev. Look, I was wondering, you still in the house, right?" His voice was too casual, too forced. "Still breathing too, Fred," I replied, my own voice drier than the autumn leaves that now littered the lawn he no longer tended. He laughed, a short, hearty, utterly false sound. "Good one, Ev. Jasmine and we were thinking about buying something bigger. A forever spot. But the market's tight, incredibly tight, and well, you got equity in that place. Lots of it." I did the math. "Oh, did you now?" My hand tightened on the receiver, my knuckles white. The sheer audacity. "Yeah, a significant amount. We could refinance it, you see. Live in it for a bit, maybe do a quick flip. It'd stay in the family, so to speak. Jasmine's got amazing ideas for a modern refresh." "In the family?" The words were laced with a disbelief so profound it was almost comical. "Fred, you are the family that left." "Come on, Evelyn. Don't be like that. You always said we built this place together, poured our hearts into it. I'm just asking for a little help with a fresh start. For us." "You already took your fresh start, Fred. Along with the good silver and my grandmother's antique clock, if I recall correctly." He paused. A beat of uncomfortable silence. "So that's a no, then? You won't even consider it?" I didn't dignify that with an answer. I simply pressed end call, the click a small, decisive punctuation mark to his outrageous request. The next day, as if on cue, a ridiculously oversized bouquet of red roses appeared on my porch. The kind of generic, guilt-assuaging gesture Fred specialized in. The note, scribbled on a generic florist card, read, "Let's keep it civil, Ev. One last favor for old time's sake." I didn't throw them away. That would have been too reactive. Instead, I let them sit on the porch, a monument to his gall, exposed to the elements. I watched them wilt, day by day, the petals browning at the edges, the once vibrant red fading to a bruised purple. A slow, visible rot, much like the truth of our marriage had been in its final years. 3 days later he texted, his tone now a little more insistent. "Jasmine really loves the house, Ev. Thinks it's incredibly charming, great bones. Let's talk. Please." They showed up unannounced one Saturday morning, just as I was enjoying a rare moment of peace with a cup of coffee and the newspaper. Jasmine, clad in a designer athleisure jumpsuit that likely cost more than my original monthly mortgage payment, teetered precariously on wedge-heeled sneakers wholly unsuited for my worn wooden porch steps. Fred, ever the picture of discomfort in such situations, feigned a sudden, intense interest in a rogue dandelion, conveniently forgetting about the loose railing I'd been asking him to fix for the better part of a decade. Jasmine, however, swept through my home like a conquering general inspecting newly acquired territory, her eyes darting everywhere, touching my things with an air of casual ownership, nodding as if she were mentally placing her own minimalist, beige furniture. "Oh, it's got potential," she declared, her voice echoing slightly in the foyer I'd painstakingly stenciled with a delicate ivy pattern. "Definitely needs some modern touches, though. A complete gut job on the kitchen, I think. And these bathrooms are tragic. But it's got soul, I guess. Some good energy." "You guess." I repeated, my voice deceptively soft, a dangerous calm settling over me. Fred chuckled nervously, wringing his hands. "Jasmine's just passionate, Ev. She's got such an amazing eye for design, you know. She's already thinking of documenting the whole Reno for her followers. From dated to divine, our forever home journey, she's calling it. Could be huge for her brand." She turned to me then, a saccharine, overly bright smile plastered on her perfectly made-up face. "We'd of course let you stay a while until you found something cozier, more manageable for your needs. Maybe a nice little condo somewhere." Cozy. Manageable. The words were like tiny, patronizing pats on my head, each one a fresh insult. The implication that I was now a doddering old woman, incapable of managing my own home, my own life. I made banana pudding that night, Fred's absolute favorite. Layered it carefully in my grandmother's crystal bowl. Not because I craved it or because I had any intention of offering him a bite, but because I wanted to feel the distinct, visceral satisfaction of scraping every last spoonful of it, uneaten, into the humming maw of the garbage disposal. A small, symbolic act of purging. Over the next month, the unannounced visits became a deeply unwelcome pattern. They stopped by 3 more times, each visit more intrusive than the last. Fred would make awkward small talk full of false bonhomie and strained reminiscences, while Jasmine took measurements with a laser device, her phone constantly out, snapping pictures, recording little video snippets for her content. "Hey, #dream home seekers," she'd chirp into her phone, oblivious to my thunderous silence, just scoping out the new project. Obsessed with these original hardwood floors. Imagine them stained a dark, moody espresso. And this fireplace? Total statement piece potential. My floors. My home. My life reduced to props for her online narrative. They even had the audacity to meet with a contractor on my front lawn, discussing extensions, skylights, and the removal of what Jasmine termed that dreadfully overgrown rosebush, the one my mother had given me as a cutting. They spoke as if I were invisible, a ghost in my own garden, their voices carrying clearly through my open living room window. I once found Jasmine posing dramatically in front of my antique mahogany fireplace, lips pursed, phone held high for the perfect selfie. I overheard her captioning aloud, "Manifesting our dream hearth. Can't wait to fill this space with love and laughter. #future Mrs. Carrington #blessed and grateful #home sweet home project." Carrington was Fred's surname, a name I had shed with profound relief the day the divorce was finalized. The final straw wasn't a grand explosion, not a shouting match. It was a quiet, dismissive question, delivered with an air of unassailable entitlement. Jasmine knocked on my bedroom door one afternoon, interrupting my reading. She held a fan of paint swatches in her hand like a winning poker hand, shades of grayish and sterile white. "Evelyn, darling," she began, her voice dripping with a false, cloying sweetness that set my teeth on edge. "Would you mind terribly if we went ahead and painted the master bedroom before the wedding? The lighting in here is just so much better for my getting ready photos, for the blog and the gram. And this current color is a bit, well, dated." She smiled, all teeth and condescension, as if bestowing a great favor. I stared at her, my own smile forming, equally sweet on the surface, lethally calm underneath. "Of course not, Jasmine." Her face lit up, a genuinely surprised delight spreading across her features. "Really? Well, thank you, Evelyn. That's so understanding of you. Fred said you might be a bit sentimental about it, but I knew you'd see reason." "Of course not," I repeated, letting the sweetness curdle just a little, my voice dropping a degree. "Because this isn't your house to paint, Jasmine. Not now. Not ever." The smile on Jasmine's face faltered, then slid off like butter on a hot skillet. Confusion, then indignation flickered in her eyes. "But Fred said we were going to make this our home. He promised." "What Fred says, Jasmine," I said, my voice now like chipped ice, each word precise and cold, "is often filtered through a rather thick layer of self-serving delusion and wishful thinking. This is my house, and you will not be painting anything. Is that clear?" That night, the charade of the grieving, fading ex-wife ended. The curtain fell. I called Letitia Maxwell, an old college friend who'd become one of the most formidable attorneys in the city, known for her sharp intellect and even sharper courtroom presence. "Letitia," I said, my voice steady, devoid of the tremor that had plagued it for months, "it's time." "Time for what, Ev?" she asked, her voice warm with friendship but with an underlying sharpness I'd always admired and now desperately needed. "Spill it. Time to remind certain people about the legal definition of ownership. And perhaps, Letitia, time to sell this house and burn some bridges." Letitia's rich, throaty laughter was a balm to my bruised spirit. "Honey, I've been waiting for this call since the day he walked out with that child. Let's get you what you deserve and then some." She confirmed what I already knew, but it was reassuring to hear it from her. The house was mine, free and clear. Fred had no claim, no rights, no leverage beyond his own inflated sense of entitlement and Jasmine's Instagram followers. Next, on Letitia's strong recommendation, I contacted Miles Dupree, a realtor who, as Letitia put it, specializes in sensitive transitions and knows how to keep his mouth shut. Miles was the epitome of discretion, mid-40s, impeccably dressed in understated navy and gray, no flashy logos on his car or his bespoke stationery, just quiet, unwavering competence. "I require absolute discretion, Mrs. Hayes," he stated, more than asked, during our first meeting in his quiet, tastefully decorated office, its atmosphere a world away from the chaos Fred and Jasmine had brought into my life. And I understand speed is also of the essence. You understand perfectly, Mr. Dupree, I replied, feeling a measure of control return for the first time in what felt like an eternity. We toured the house, my house still, but not for much longer. One weekday afternoon while Fred and Jasmine were out, blissfully unaware, likely shopping for more things to fill a home they would never inhabit. I pointed out the crown molding I'd paid a premium for, the sun-drenched breakfast nook that had been my favorite spot for morning coffee, and the guest room Jasmine had recently commandeered to stage her endless fashion hauls for her online followers, my antique heirloom quilt tossed carelessly onto a chair like a discarded rag. Miles took meticulous notes on a small leather-bound pad, his expression unreadable, nodding respectfully at my quiet litany of memories and ownership. "You'll get what this place deserves, Mrs. Hayes," he said finally, his voice calm and reassuring. "And perhaps with the current market a little more." He delivered, and with astonishing speed. It didn't take long. A cash offer significantly above the asking price came from a delightful family relocating from Chicago for a new job. No inspection delays, no financing hiccups, no haggling. Just clean numbers and a commitment to close quickly. Miles, with his characteristic quiet efficiency and brilliant strategic mind, managed to expedite everything for a rapid close, shrewdly aligning it with the very day of Fred and Jasmine's wedding for maximum undisturbed effect. A delicious, quiet irony indeed. The kind that settles deep in your bones. I signed the final papers in Miles's hushed office, the stroke of my pen firm and decisive. Meanwhile, miles away back at my house, Jasmine was hosting her final wedding dress fitting in my living room, surrounded by a fawning entourage. She had a full glam squad bustling about, curlers, steamers, makeup artists flown in from out of state. I'd seen her through the window earlier that morning, an iced matcha latte clutched in her manicured hand, imperiously instructing someone to move those dusty old books off the mantel. They're totally ruining the aesthetic for my pre-wedding shoot. That's what she called my cherished first edition Langston Hughes collection. Dusty. Fred naturally hadn't even flinched. He just beamed at her, the adoring, oblivious fool. But I was no longer a passive observer, a footnote in my own life story. I took photos, meticulously documenting every unauthorized change, every piece of my furniture they moved without so much as a by your leave, every paint can Jasmine's presumptuously hired contractors left uncapped overnight in my garage. I noted the new scratches on my antique dining table, a legacy from her acrylic nails tapping impatiently during her interminable live streams. I kept a private digital album on my laptop, each image time-stamped, meticulously labeled, evidence of occupation, what they'll leave behind. They thought I was a relic, a piece of outdated decor to be gently moved aside and eventually discarded. But I was a record keeper. I was the historian of my own life and, as it turned out, of their egregious transgressions. Letitia had walked me through every conceivable legal angle, her thoroughness a comfort. Because the deed was solely and unequivocally in my name, Fred's assumptions, his entire house of cards, were built on the shifting sands of his own arrogance. He had simply presumed my silence was submission, my grief a permanent state of incapacitation. He was profoundly, spectacularly wrong. Jasmine continued to gush on her social media channels about this incredible new chapter, pointing at my kitchen's classic subway tiles in her videos as if she'd personally chosen them after hours of deliberation. She thanked the universe repeatedly for her abundant blessings and hashtagged her posts with an almost pathological frequency. I watched one particularly nauseating video of her twirling on my front porch in a white silk robe embroidered with future Mrs. Carrington in glittering gold thread, her arms wide as if embracing a kingdom she believed was already hers. Let her have her fleeting digital illusion. The reality would be far more bracing. Miles Dupree coordinated everything with the precision of a master conductor orchestrating a complex symphony. We agreed that I'd vacate the home the morning of their wedding, when they'd both be utterly distracted and self-absorbed at the lavish ceremony venue they'd booked across town. Professional movers, vetted and arranged by Miles, would arrive at sunrise, their movements swift and silent. I'd leave the buyer's welcome letter, the keys, and the comprehensive change of ownership packet on the gleaming empty kitchen counter. Jasmine's last ostentatious bouquet of imported lilies, no doubt intended for her grand entrance as the new lady of the manor, would still be fresh in the antique Waterford vase I'd inherited from my grandmother. A vase that would, of course, be leaving with me. Her name would never, ever be on any deed associated with this address. 3 days before the wedding, Jasmine, in a moment of supreme, breathtaking audacity, asked Fred to have those old, dreary curtains in the dining room removed and replaced with something more contemporary, maybe a sheer linen. They were my mother's hand-stitched Belgian linen, a wedding gift to me. That night, with a heavy heart but a firm resolve, I carefully took them down myself, folded them with reverence, and placed them tenderly in a cedar chest destined for my new life. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I didn't shed a tear in their presence. My grief was my own, not a spectacle for their amusement or dismissal. Said I prepared. I sorted my belongings with a quiet, focused intensity, transferring important documents and family photographs to a new fireproof lockbox, and my modest collection of jewelry to a safety deposit box at the bank. The sentimental letters Fred once wrote me in college, filled with youthful declarations of undying love, now stained with time and irony, I tossed into the fireplace one cool evening, watching the ink bubble and the paper curl into ash. A necessary act of severing. I packed one suitcase with essentials for my hotel stay. The rest of my life's possessions, Letitia had arranged to be discreetly moved by a trusted separate team to my new as yet undisclosed residence the following week. Nobody, not Fred, not Jasmine, not even my well-meaning but sometimes overly inquisitive sister Janice, noticed the subtle shift in my energy, the newfound steel in my spine, the glint of determination in my eyes. They saw only what they wanted to see, the quiet, fading Evelyn. On the final night before their wedding, Jasmine hosted an impromptu champagne toast with her giggling bridesmaids in my kitchen, sipping expensive French wine from my vintage crystal glasses, their laughter echoing a little too loudly through the house I still called home. I stayed in my room, the door pointedly closed, listening to the clinking glasses and their shrill, excited pronouncements about the glorious future that awaited the happy couple. She called Fred in for a special toast, her voice carrying clearly up the stairs. To the home that started it all, Jasmine gushed, her voice loud enough for me and probably the entire neighborhood to hear clearly. Our forever home. May it be filled with love, laughter, and amazing content. Fred replied, his voice thick with a nauseating manufactured sentimentality. And to the incredible, beautiful woman who made me feel young again, and who will make this house a true palace fit for a queen. No mention of me. No flicker of gratitude for the 35 years, the memories made, the life we'd shared and built within those very walls. I was already a ghost to them. That was when the final nail of my resolve, if any further reinforcement were needed, clicked firmly and irrevocably into place. Not in a burst of consuming rage, but in a moment of quiet, absolute, chilling affirmation. I stood at my bedroom window for a long time that night, looking out at the yard I'd lovingly tended for over 3 decades. The rose bushes, my particular pride and joy, had bloomed early this year, a riot of vibrant color in the deepening twilight. The fragrant jasmine vine on the fence, a living curtain of white stretched wide, its perfume heavy in the cool night air. I whispered to the encroaching darkness, a vow more than a farewell. Goodbye, old friend. You deserve better than them. Morning came, crisp and brilliantly clear. The day of their wedding. The house was still, holding its breath, a silent accomplice to my departure. I dressed quickly in a simple, elegant navy dress, a garment of quiet dignity, made my bed one last time with military precision, and walked through every room, a silent, solitary farewell tour. In the foyer, I paused for a moment under the antique brass chandelier where Fred had once, a lifetime ago, danced with me with an awkward, endearing tenderness after our son Desmond was born. He had no memory for those tender, unglamorous moments anymore. They'd been overwritten by newer, shinier, more Instagrammable versions. I placed the comprehensive welcome packet for the new owners, the Petersons, on the scrubbed-clean kitchen counter, next to a small, unassuming bouquet of fresh lavender and white lilies I'd bought myself the day before. Flowers of peace and new beginnings. I left a short, polite, handwritten note for them. May this home bring you generations of joy, laughter, and genuine happiness. May it treat you far better than its previous presumptive tenants treated its rightful owner. I locked the heavy oak front door behind me, the click of the deadbolt satisfyingly final, a sound that resonated deep within my soul. I didn't look back. There was nothing left to see. Miles Dupree was waiting in his discreet dark gray sedan parked a little way down the street, exactly as planned. The moment I settled into the plush leather passenger seat, I felt the almost physical weight of decades, of unspoken hurts, of accumulated disrespect and casual cruelty lift from my shoulders. It was as if I'd shed a heavy, suffocating cloak. "Are you all right, Mrs. Hayes?" he asked, his eyes kind but impeccably professional in the rearview mirror. I nodded, a genuine, unforced smile finally gracing my lips. "I'm more than all right, Mr. Dupree. I'm ready for whatever comes next." By noon, precisely as Fred and Jasmine were likely exchanging their carefully rehearsed vows at their chosen opulent venue, the closing on the house had been officially finalized. The wire transfer of funds was confirmed, safely nestled in my bank account. The house on Elm Street was no longer mine, and crucially no longer theirs to even dream about possessing. They had a wedding to celebrate, a future to toast with expensive champagne. But their home, their so-called castle, the very foundation of their grand, entitled plans? It belonged to someone else entirely now. And they didn't know it. Not yet. The delicious anticipation of that inevitable discovery was a secret I savored. I spent that night and the next few at the Marquette, a small, charming boutique hotel downtown, all quiet old-world elegance, tucked beside a serene, lamplit garden courtyard. Letitia stopped by briefly on that first evening, bringing a bottle of excellent non-alcoholic sparkling cider and a slice of delectable peach tart from her favorite bakery. We sat on the small wrought iron balcony overlooking the twinkling city lights, some distant music from another, unrelated celebration drifting on the warm evening breeze. "Think they'll notice right away?" Letitia asked, a mischievous, conspiratorial glint in her usually serious eyes. "They'll notice," I said, sipping my cider, a profound sense of calm washing over me. "They'll notice when their shiny new key doesn't fit the lock. Or perhaps when Mr. and Mrs. Peterson are enjoying their first family dinner in what Fred and Jasmine considered their dining room. We didn't toast to their downfall, not explicitly. We didn't gossip about their inevitable shock and outrage. Our satisfaction was quieter, deeper than that. We simply sat in a comfortable, knowing silence. Two women who had seen enough of the world, enough of its casual cruelties and hard-won triumphs, to understand that the most potent revenge doesn't have to be loud or dramatic. It just has to be final, impeccably executed, and utterly undeniable. The next morning, the hotel's sun-drenched breakfast buffet was an oasis of tranquility. I sat near a large window, cradling a cup of fragrant Earl Grey tea, watching the city slowly wake up beneath a soft, pearly morning fog. My worn-in, comfortable slippers, the same pair Fred had once derisively called dowdy and unsuitable for a woman of your age, brushed against the cool, patterned tile floor. I wore them defiantly now, a small act of personal rebellion. Comfort, I'd learned, had a price and I'd finally, decisively, paid it in full. My phone, which I deliberately kept on silent and tucked away in my purse, showed a staggering 14 missed calls when I finally glanced at it. 4 from Fred, increasingly frantic. 8 from a number I didn't recognize but instinctively suspected was Jasmine, using a borrowed phone. 2 from my son, Desmond, likely roped into the unfolding, bewildering drama by a hysterical bride or a sputtering groom. I ignored them all. The silence was medicinal, a healing balm to my long-battered spirit. Every unanswered call, every frantic voicemail I knew was accumulating, was a small, satisfying reclamation of my control, my peace, my narrative. Then came a knock on my hotel room door. Not forceful or frantic, but polite, almost hesitant. Calculated. The kind of knock that precedes an unpleasant but necessary confrontation. I opened it just a crack, the sturdy brass security chain still firmly engaged. Fred stood there, his expensive wedding suit looking rumpled and slept-in, his eyes bloodshot and ringed with exhaustion. He was holding a slim, pristine white envelope as if it were radioactive. Jasmine was nowhere in sight, for which I was profoundly grateful. I didn't think I could have stomached her particular brand of theatrics just then. "We just got back from well, we're back," he said softly, his voice hoarse, devoid of its usual arrogant bluster. Their glamorous Greek honeymoon had evidently been unceremoniously cut short, or perhaps more deliciously, had never even begun once the devastating news of the house sale had reached them. I raised an eyebrow, maintaining a cool, unruffled demeanor. "Lovely. I trust you had an enjoyable flight. His face crumpled slightly, the carefully constructed facade of the happy bridegroom shattering before my eyes. You sold the house, Evelyn. Our house. The proprietary tone was still there, astonishingly. I kept my expression neutral, my voice even. My house, Fred. As per the terms of our legally binding divorce agreement, which you seem to have conveniently forgotten in your rush to acquire new assets and a new wife. He sighed, a gust of defeated air, and actually sagged a little, stepping back as if the very atmosphere in the hallway had suddenly grown too heavy to bear. You blindsided us, Evelyn. Completely and utterly blindsided us. How could you do this? I tilted my head, allowing a sliver of the glacial ice I'd kept packed around my heart for so many months to finally show in my eyes. The way you blindsided me with a divorce after 35 years of marriage, Fred? The way you announced your engagement to a woman young enough to be your daughter before the ink on our settlement was even dry? The way your fiancé waltzed into my home and blithely planned its demolition while I was still living in it? That particular kind of blindsided, do you mean? He flinched visibly as each word landed like a precisely aimed dart. I never meant to hurt you, Ev. Not like this. You didn't mean to honor me either, Fred. And there, as they say, is the rub. There's a profound difference. A strained, uncomfortable silence hung heavy between us, broken only by the distant hum of the hotel's ventilation system. He looked down at the envelope in his trembling hand, then held it out tentatively towards the small gap in the door. Photos. From the wedding. You're in one of them, by the way. In the background, sort of. Standing by the stairs. His voice was barely a whisper. I took the envelope, my fingers brushing his for a fleeting, unwelcome moment. His hand was cold and clammy. Then, slowly, deliberately, I closed the door in his face, engaging the deadbolt with a soft, final, deeply satisfying click. Later, out of a detached, almost anthropological curiosity, I thumbed through the glossy prints. Jasmine in her ostentatious meringue-like white dress, pooling like spilled milk across my polished hardwood floors. Fred beaming beside her, looking like a man desperately, pathetically, trying to recapture a youth that had long since deserted him. And there I was in one candid, unintentionally captured shot. A blur near the banister, a shadowy, indistinct figure in the distant background of their stolen, ill-fated moment. An afterthought. A ghost at their feast. I gathered the photographs, walked them down to the ornate, crackling fireplace in the hotel's quiet, wood-paneled lobby, and dropped them one by one onto the glowing embers. Let them burn. Let them turn to ash, just like Fred's empty promises and Jasmine's fleeting dreams of my house. The next morning the headlines, or rather the digital whispers and gleeful online gossip, began to shift and gain traction. Not quite viral yet, but certainly trending in certain local circles. Letitia called with an amused update. Jasmine apparently had contacted a lawyer, a rather flamboyant character known more for his late-night television commercials and questionable fashion sense than for his legal acumen. She was trying to claim her name was promised on the deed as part of a prenuptial understanding. Claimed extreme emotional distress. Claimed I had somehow forged documents or tricked poor, unsuspecting Fred into believing the house was his to offer. Letitia's rich, unrestrained laughter boomed over the speakerphone. Baby, her legion of influencer followers and their likes can't overwrite a legally binding ironclad title, a series of notarized signatures and a clean, undisputed bill of sale. We notarized every single signature twice just for good measure, knowing who we were dealing with. Still, the sheer, unadulterated nerve of it. The breathtaking entitlement. The blatant, almost childlike assumption that youth, Instagram filters, a vapid social media following, and a misplaced sense of manifest destiny could somehow bulldoze over established law, recorded memory, and simple, irrefutable justice. Fred tried again, this time via a long, rambling, self-pitying email, riddled with typos and thinly veiled accusations. The gist of his incoherent screed was, "If you were going to sell it, Evelyn, why didn't you at least give us the chance to buy it from you? We would have paid a fair price." I typed a single, concise, and utterly devastating line in reply. "You already tried to take it for free, Fred. The price for that, as you're now discovering, is your dignity. And apparently your credit rating." Then, for good measure, I had Letitia's office formally forward him and his new hapless attorney a certified copy of the final sales receipt, along with a polite but firm note from the new owner's legal representation regarding any further attempts to contact them or approach the property. Letitia, with her characteristic thoroughness and impressive network of resources, had also managed to obtain irrefutable proof of Fred's increasingly shaky finances, including a copy of an official bank notice showing his primary business account had recently bounced a substantial check intended for a non-refundable wedding-related deposit. He had no idea I knew the full sordid extent of his deceit, no inkling that the lavish renovations he'd so confidently promised Jasmine were already well beyond his precarious financial reach. He hadn't bothered with the math. He was only now painfully beginning to feel the subtraction. Jasmine, on the other hand, true to her influencer nature, went dramatically public. Not with a reasoned argument or a coherent legal claim, but with a theatrical, tear-filled social media meltdown. She didn't dare storm Letitia's office. Her new lawyer, after receiving a very pointed and legally robust cease and desist letter from Letitia, had strongly advised against it. Instead, she posted a series of increasingly unhinged videos, still often clad in her wedding attire, or a similar white dress, presumably for dramatic effect, lamenting how she'd been conned, betrayed, and robbed of her dream. "This was supposed to be our dream home, our forever," she wailed to her followers, mascara streaking artfully down her perfectly contoured cheeks. "She tricked us. That vindictive old woman waited until our wedding day to destroy our happiness, to ruin everything." The comments section was a predictable, chaotic mix of fawning sympathy from her loyal young fans and biting skepticism from more discerning viewers. Someone, likely a bemused neighbor, recorded a snippet of her public tirade at the new owners when they'd politely but firmly asked her to leave the property she was technically trespassing on, where she was still attempting to direct a tearful tell-all photo shoot on the front lawn. That clip, blurry but damningly clear in its audio, did go briefly, gloriously viral. "She sold it. She sold our house out from under us," Jasmine shrieked, her voice cracking with fury. An off-camera voice, calm and distinctly unimpressed, drawled, "Wait, she owned it the whole time, right? Sounds more like y'all tricked yourselves, honey." The clip was 37 seconds of pure, unadulterated, public-facing cringe. I didn't post it, of course. I never would. Dignity, unlike influencer status, was not for sale. But Lord knows, Letitia and I permitted ourselves a small, private, deeply satisfied chuckle when it was anonymously forwarded to our inboxes. My son, Desmond, who had been conspicuously silent throughout the initial explosion, sent a tentative, carefully worded email a few days later. "Mom," it began, "I'm so embarrassed by all of this. I had no idea things were this fraught between you and Dad and her. I genuinely didn't think you had it in you to be so decisive. So ruthless, I guess." I didn't reply immediately. I let his words settle. But if I had, I might have said, "That's the thing about mothers, Desmond. You often underestimate what we have in us, what we're capable of when pushed too far. You never truly know the depth of the bedrock beneath the garden until you try to dig it up without permission." The weeks that followed were a quiet, steady unfolding into a new, unburdened chapter. The house on Elm Street, my former home, was repainted a cheerful, optimistic shade of yellow by the Petersons. They sent me a lovely handwritten thank you card, complete with a charming, slightly blurry photograph of their rescue dog, a golden retriever mix named Lemon, happily asleep on the newly refurbished porch swing. They wrote that the neighborhood felt wonderfully safe and welcoming, the kitchen was an absolute dream, truly divine, and they hoped to fill the house with real joy, genuine laughter, and happy family memories for many, many years to come. I cried when I read that. Not tears of sorrow or regret, but cleansing tears of release, of a deep, resonant, unexpected healing. The house was in good hands. My legacy there, the good parts of it, would endure. Letitia, a true friend as well as a brilliant lawyer, helped me finalize the down payment on my new place. A modern, light-filled apartment in a vibrant, walkable part of the city, with a stunning corner window offering panoramic views and custom-built bookshelves already gracing the walls, awaiting my treasured volumes. I brought only what I truly loved, what sparked joy, what represented my authentic self. My thriving collection of indoor plants, my handmade pottery, a cherished silver-framed photo of my parents on their wedding day, their faces alight with a hope that felt finally mirrored in my own heart. The day I officially moved in, I played Sam Cooke on my old vinyl record player, the music swelling through the sun-drenched rooms, and I danced barefoot in the living room, a solitary, joyful celebration of my newfound freedom. My phone stayed blessedly quiet after that initial flurry. The angry calls and demanding texts dwindled, then ceased altogether. Desmond, to his credit, eventually sought a proper face-to-face reconciliation. We met for coffee at a quiet cafe overlooking the lake, a neutral territory. He looked older than I remembered, a little more worn around the edges, the youthful arrogance replaced by a more somber understanding. He apologized sincerely and without reservation, for not seeing the extent of the disrespect, for not standing up for me when Jasmine's entitled behavior had been so blatant in my own home. He'd been young, he said, caught in the middle, eager to please his father and his new love. I listened and I forgave. Not entirely for him perhaps, but mostly for myself. Carrying that particular brand of anger, the disappointment in one's own child, was too heavy a burden to bear into my new life. Fred never sent another letter, never made another call. His silence was a gift. And Jasmine? Well, Letitia, who possessed an uncanny ability to gather pertinent information through her extensive network, forwarded me a discreet tip from a reliable friend at the county courthouse a few months later. Looks like she filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and financial misrepresentation. Annulment was denied, but the divorce is pending. Apparently, Fred's web of financial deceptions ran even deeper than just the house and its phantom equity. I didn't celebrate his misfortune nor hers. There was no joy to be found in their unraveling. But I did pour myself a generous glass of chilled rose that evening, sitting on my new balcony, watching the city lights blink into glittering existence like a galaxy of tiny, distant stars. It wasn't a toast to spite or to their failure. Just a quiet acknowledgement of my own quiet satisfaction, my hard-won peace. One night as I sat there, a gentle evening breeze rustling the leaves of my potted ficus tree, I heard the unmistakable sound of jazz drifting from a nearby apartment. Someone was playing Coltrane, the soulful, melancholic notes floating through the air like an old, comforting friend. I closed my eyes and smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached all the way to my soul. It was over. No fireworks. No grand, theatrical explosion of retribution. Just a quiet, clean, and utterly complete ending to a painful chapter. The kind of closure, I realized, you only truly get when you stop asking for it, stop expecting it from others, and instead start meticulously, bravely, and unapologetically writing your own. I wasn't expired. I was seasoned. And like the best, most complex meals I had taken my time to prepare had been served hot, and I knew with a certainty that warmed me from the inside out, that I would leave a lasting, perhaps even unforgettable taste. Not bitter. Just me. Unforgettable Evelyn. The river outside my new window shimmered like brushed silver in the soft morning light. Laughter, faint and sweet as wind chimes, drifted up from the meticulously landscaped courtyard below. Someone's grandchildren, I presumed, their joyful innocence a welcome sound. I stirred my Earl Grey tea with a slender cinnamon stick, my legs tucked comfortably beneath me on the plush window seat of my new apartment. Peace, I'd finally, profoundly understood, didn't arrive in thunderous declarations or dramatic confrontations. It settled softly like morning mist in a quiet valley, after the storm had unequivocally passed, after the doors to the past were firmly, finally locked, after the keys had irrevocably changed hands. And I, Evelyn Hayes, was finally, deeply, resoundingly at peace. I was not expiring. I was evolving.